this one?
Okay, we are live then. It says.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Veza Fernandez, and I'm organizing together with
Me, with Magdalena, who managed the symposium, Music Pours Over the Sands. We've been yesterday having the whole day of interesting talks and 2 panels that question the agencies of relationships between body and sound that are now, and how do they work at the moment under the pandemics and in the crisis. And we are very happy to welcome you today to our panel on gathering and on rights for to gather and to demonstrate and to dance and to make music together. We would like to maybe start just by everybody introducing herself very shortly, but really short. Name and a bit what is your field of research, where you guys come from, and what you're doing in general.
And where do you let sound and dance dialogue, maybe?
Who would like to start?
Magdalena?
Okay, sure. Hi. Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me first. I'm from Hong Kong and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Hong Kong. So I have 2 hats. So I am a choral director in training and I am also a researcher, and mainly my research method is in ethnography. So I'm an ethnographer. So for my research, my main focus is mostly on the politics of identity and choir and collective singing activity in Hong Kong. So I go out to do field work and also do archival work to put in line the history of Hong Kong, the cultural background of Hong Kong in relation to our choir singing activities.
Thank you. Jamila?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jamila Johnson-Small and I'm based in London. I make performances. I'm trained as a dancer. That.
Right. Naya?
Hey, I'm Nadia Orashvili. Actually, I'm film director. I'm owner of Club Basian in Tbilisi. I'm activist in many social movements.
And I'm Georgi Giganishvili, also one of the founders of Forum Nights, which is a queer party which takes place at Basiani, also a social activist and doing so many social activism. But this time I will be here to translating for Nadia.
Okay, so my turn. My name is Bogomir Doringer, and I'm an artist, researcher, and curator when necessary, interested in ritual of masking and dancing in time of social political crisis. And I'm doing artistic research PhD at the University of Applied Arts Vienna, and really kind of pushing this agenda and importance of dance in time of urgency. So the dance of urgency, that was also exhibition that happened in Vienna, and a lot of different gatherings and symposiums through the period of years. So the idea is really to look into dance and understand how dance can help us to come together or deal with certain situations, and also when it can become a political movement, like an example from Georgia. So now in time of Corona crisis, it's interesting to look how can we practice being together or staying sane in time of the pandemic. So yeah, that's short. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know. The first question Magda and I were thinking is to pose is that the impact that the current crisis is having on your practice. Maybe we can go again like in a line. Or I wanted to ask you, do you prefer that we ask you talk, or could we now open it more that one person talks and then freely one jumps in? Do you have any, because we are many, until now we have never had a panel with so many people, and so that everyone.
But maybe I think that it would be nice if people, if each of you will find really a bit of space for it. But if you feel like you have nothing to add, or you are not interested in the question that is coming, you can just completely stay out, and it's totally no problem. But maybe that we don't have always the circular one, two,
we don't have to tell you, come now, you.
Yes, if you want to talk, maybe raise your hand, or that's the point, and then maybe the person goes. I mean, we have to organize some sort of a strange choreography here, but I think in big panels it works always good when somebody just raises the hand. So yes, the first question exactly, like what is going on at the moment with your organization work, with your artistic practice, with what you're doing, with your activity, basically.
I guess, I mean, for choir music and core music activity, that is really hitting very hard on our industry, because basically we rely on physical interaction and also meeting face to face to make sound together. Even though there's a trend of doing virtual choir online, but that cannot 100% replace the core of choral singing, which is like we stay in a room and feel each other's frequency and response to each other's voices. So that's a very crucial point of choral singing, which under the pandemic we cannot carry out. So that's a difficult situation, as you can all imagine. But also there's also a, you can say, philosophical perspective on it, which what I mean by that is in Hong Kong context, choral singing is a very international multicultural activity. So we'll sing works from other places and we'll sing from other culture. But with the growing trend of there is anti-globalization trend that comes along with the pandemic, and also some kinds of hostility towards certain kinds of culture, out of the fear of the virus, and then project to a fear to certain culture or certain ethnicity group. So that require a choir director or programmer to think of new ways to make sure the program can still work and still acceptable by the audience, so on. So that's something we have been thinking about practically, but also philosophically.
Mm.
Yeah, okay, I can go. Yeah, I mean, for me is kind of interesting because since I was always interested in urgencies and somehow also announcing that the urgency is coming in a sense, also in the Western part of the world, you know, like Europe and these kind of areas that for a long time had privilege and comfort where everything is more or less fine, you know, like all the wars that happened last decades did not disturb the way we live and the style and the economy and etc. Like, I mean, economy on and off, but like nothing compares to some other places. So I guess the whole point of my interest in urgencies also comes from just sort of growing up in one. So in Yugoslavia during the 90s, and then also understanding how important is creativity and gathering and how you can form the political opposition through the idea of dancing and coming together, or in nothing else, how can you filter the fear and insecurities through these practices. And also that, you know, in time of crisis, art has impact through film and through performance mostly. Like this is what somehow works the best. You know, a painting and sculpture will not do anything in time of collective crisis. So for me, it was really interested to look into the mediums that are necessary to sort of be pushed further and yeah, give the visibility and that narrative. So what happens now is that one of my researchers was on the topic of disappearance of face in contemporary art and the return of mask in public protests. So from the recent ones like Hong Kong, but also Pussy Riot, Anonymous, so like a really ritual of masking, something very ancient and very old. And on the other side, this ritual of dancing. So since Corona crisis started, I'm extremely active. Like, I mean, I am always, but like now even more to that point that I'm asked to sort of help in reshaping the institutional programs, educational programs, help students how to become visible in time of graduations, even in this time, but also really rethink what is the dance today. And how can we avoid this nationalist, what was now mentioned, like, you know, this whole, what happens with pandemic or any kind of war is like you close yourself. I mean, like all the countries are closing themselves. It's all now about us. It's not like this sort of idea of like a, being together is very different. I mean, EU is also in a crisis. So it's really like, how can we now extract from these practices and do something large? And this is why clubs to me were always fascinating, because they're these experimental grounds where you can practice with small group or larger group of people exactly something that can be applied in these kind of situations. On the other side, what's unfair is that the clubs are mostly perceived still on a level of prostitution and casinos, and there are rarely places and countries where they're on a level of a culture institution or culture hubs. And this is partially because the law has not been changed, but it's also partially because the community around these places was sometimes very lazy to realize that this position of being constantly underground is not possible always. So you need to infiltrate yourself. You need to work with the others. This diverse itself from place to place. So what's now said is that these places that are so important for our for these practices are actually also being closed, and they're getting locked or they're losing their spaces. So yeah, that's a kind of the yeah. I will come back to some points, but like that's what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. ყველაფერი რაც ჩვენს ქალაქს ასიცოცხლებდა, ეს იქნებოდა ქუჩის აქტივიზმი თუ საკლუბო კულტურა, ყველაფერი გაჩერებულია. წინააღმდეგობა შეჩერებულია, ცეკვა აღარ არის, ჩვენი სხეული ვერ დამორჩილებული, მოდუნებული, რაც ნიშნავს, რომ ჯერ კიდევ ვეგუებით ამ ახალ რეალობას.
Everything which was bringing the life to our city, the dance, the protests, the street activism, and the resistance, and everything is now shut down because of the COVID crisis, and our bodies are relaxed because we are still adjusting to this new situation.
და ყველაზე მთავარი ის რომ უსაფრთხო სივრცეები და თავისუფალი სივრცეები, რომელიც ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი იყო ახალი თაობისთვის, queer ადამიანებისთვის, რომლებიც რაღაც გამოქცეულები იყვნენ ამ ოჯახური რუტინისგან, ისინი წართმეულია და ჯერ კიდევ არ ვიცით.
And what's even more important is that the safe spaces, which are crucially important for many people in the city, like including the queer people, these spaces are now shut down, and we still don't know where it's going to be open and when we have the ability to go back to our safe spaces.
Thank you.
I guess I'll speak very much like just about me. I've sort of disconnected, or I haven't been practicing or necessarily engaging with the communities with whom I was practicing before this. And I feel very much like the work that I do with dancing is so much about energies, encountering the energies of others, managing the energies that move through my body. And now with the screen life, I don't have answers for how the practices can continue in a way that has a presentation, let's say. The flattening of the dimensions within movement that happen with the screen is very, like, I find it very intense. Lots of people have moved quite quickly to, you know, out of necessity, let's say, to online education, like online dance classes, online performances. And I'm slow. I don't say this as a self-criticism, but I'm slow to understand how to work within this media. But the things I'm busy with are again the immediate things in my home, the immediate things in my garden, the immediate sort of rhythms of my body, watching it, noticing it adjust or shift. Yeah, like my world is both smaller and larger.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to refer to something that we've been talking about yesterday, because yesterday during the improvisation panel, Keith Hennessy was speaking a lot about this online classes and how you need to stand somewhere and then you see just this body which is somewhere back there behind the screen and you cannot completely relate, and how he was describing how people started to like work only with one body part in front of the screen, so you can kind of retranslate a certain somatic experience that you could have, and how crazy it starts to become within the sex and tantra community and all the somatic practitioners that try to kind of find a way of reproducing of eye gazing and these all things that we are just missing at the moment that are not able to be reproduced. So how this medium start to translate. The other thing that comes to my mind is, of course, this way of gathering on Zoom or on the interface or within the aspect of programming, which is of course being again owned by people who of course owe a lot in this world. And I mean what that happens, how the gathering through the internet, through technology becomes gathering actually reigned and directed by very different powers that we would like to have somehow with gathering. I mean, our resistance and our subvertive gathering with these middles of technology. At the moment we talk through Zoom, of course we could use other platform, but Zoom is available right now. So I think this what also yesterday came a lot about that. Where do we actually put all our agency, into which hands? Who is actually standing behind all that media, and how can we still become somehow, because for me the club is also a space. You were talking a lot about the club. Yesterday the video of Naya showed also how people traveled from the club onto the streets and between the streets and the club. So how these two spaces cooperate together. And now this is the space given to us, and it somehow seems, of course, very different to the real space, also in sense of who owes it and what sort of dynamics operating within these medias. Sorry, it was just my divagation, because yesterday we talked a lot about this.
Yeah, it came like, oh my God, the Zoom, maybe it's the new public space. We were talking about in the improvisation about that, and in the voice we were talking a lot about taking the voice in a public space. And maybe if the internet is a public space now and it's all privatized and our voices are so, and movements are so surveilled, how can you avoid that? And keep on connecting and keep on interacting.
Okay, I mean, I can say some. So I mean, for me, internet was always a public space.
Always.
I mean, that's what the original idea of internet was.
Yeah.
I think what the problem is that we did not get it like that, and that we actually didn't care because we were focused on some other public spaces. And then again, even those public spaces are not our public spaces because they belong to the city, they belong to the property owners. So I mean, the whole issue of gentrification is that this space is not ours. We are renting it through the tax, we are renting it through our like payments, mortgage or anything. So it's like a hotel. I mean, nothing is really ours. I mean, like
I know, but
it's no. I just wanted to sort of elaborate that's like a sort of big miss. I think that's what we kind of take things for granted in a way. And another thing, I think the internet has a power. I mean, and even if we're now not together, like I can notice your shirt, your hair, your space, like we already spoke once. So like I do feel that there is some kind of relationship being developed. The problem is that we did not project enough of energy into this medium to really use it. And on the other side, in order to have an event in Georgia like the revolution in front of the parliament, or even any kind of protest last years, it wouldn't happen without internet. So the only reason why these events were so successful is because you could actually reach somebody directly through the smiley, through the set of dots, so through the gestures. So I think we're actually so lucky to live in time when we do have actually this sort of. So what you were also talking about, how do you deal with the body in front of the camera? You have to come closer. Do you maybe do gestures? This is exactly what is also happening on a dance floor. You can look from like you can stand on a staircase and look into the crowd, and you will see this one thing. But when you zoom in, you will see that each person has this set of gestures, sometimes very nice, very welcoming, very warm, sometimes very aggressive. So I think we just need to sit and work and not underestimate this technology that is so deeply part of our life, and just engage with it, yeah. And rather than saying like, this is for me and this is not for me, no, everything is for you. And these are our tools. Yeah, so like we are living what was the art project in the end of the 90s, like we live in public, the project. So we're just like, corporations took over our public space and we let it happen. So, yeah.
That's right.
Camila.
Sorry. I have a question about the managing the frontality that these interfaces demand, like the impact of that on sort of on grounding oneself, on, as you say, like what are the gestures that we're doing here to communicate, and the demand is forward, is front, and this is something like that within performance worlds has been trying to be untangled for a long time, like to lose the front, to break the fourth wall, whatever. And again, it's like we're confronted with this situation of frontality, and like I just wonder like how you think about managing this, or if you feel the effects of this in the rest of your day, like when you're not engaging in this dimension or in this front situation.
Sorry, was the question for me, Jamila, or?
It can be for anyone.
And for everyone. Okay.
What you said.
Yeah.
I can say that definitely as a dancer, this is exactly for me. It feels almost like 10 steps backwards. Like what we are doing at the moment is something that all my life I worked on something exactly not to be there somehow, and I completely accept the situation. But I feel my back is completely dead. And I think I've been working for like last time really much on my back, but not in a way of how it's straight or how it looks, but how it senses and how it feels. And I've done the whole work that is called ichorography, that was busy with re-relating to internet in order not to get addicted as a dancer and as an artist, because we are spending doing so much art on computer, on internet, although I'm a mover, and actually I would like to not to do that so much, but I'm forced to because of a bureaucracy and because of everything basically at the moment. And so for me, it's very physical, and it does definitely do something to me that I feel we will not be the same, also because of the use or overuse of the medium. For me, it does stay, it does embody me, and it does then require an extra work to somehow go back to this zone of sensation that I can feel in 3 dimensions. Definitely, this is something that I really do very strongly feel, just personally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly the sort of importance of dance in these times, because on one side we do want to keep the contact, we want to have this relationship. On the other side, yes, our body are shaped by this new technology, and I think when I was filming the parties from the bird eye view, like what really comes very obvious is that moment when people take their phone on a dance floor. And there was the whole sort of, you know, like if you remember from 2000 to 2010, sometimes when you go to the concert or party, everybody was with their phone. So this technology really interrupted the dance. And then that's why there was this policy of no cameras on the dance floor. DVS1, Berkhan, Bassiani, this whole lot of clubs picked this up, and then the body got reclaimed, sort of taken back from technology. So it's really about, like, we have like a super interesting sort of new media art proposals, like how can we work with these mediums. On the other side, we have a really old school dance, like as a way of sort of balancing these two. And just to like, even like if you think of surveillance, I mean, in spaces, it did change our posture, it normalized us. We all want to appear in public spaces, good, nice people. Another example, those white are like earplugs, like from iPhone. They also change your posture. You know, suddenly in the coffee shops, like before pandemic, everybody's sitting on the laptop with a perfect posture, because you know you can't be grungy as in 90s. So the technology is constantly shaping our bodies, and we have practices to get the body back. Yeah, that's a kind of interesting sort of tension, I think, there. Yeah, but the frontal is definitely and then you're facing the technology, so you're like really exposed to the maximum in a way, and that's very tiring.
Yeah.
For me personally,
I'm sorry, but okay, sorry. Yes, because I really would like to add something based on what's actually like currently happening in Hong Kong right now at this very time, and is the yes, we can make use of technology, and our movement in 2019 till now could not have been happen without technology, obviously, but still there is some kind of human tendency to really go out to the scene, touching an architecture or place other than your home, and also claiming, like Bogoso said, like reclaiming the body to feel an ownership and autonomy to really you can do something in a space, in a place where you call that relate to you or belongs to your community. So for instance, right now there's a group of people doing the singing activity in shopping malls, despite there's in regulation a prohibition of gathering, so people cannot gather about more than 8 people. So right now at this moment, I'm looking at my phone with Facebook Live, and like they're reclaiming the place to say we have right to shop here, and we have right to sing here and chant here. So yes, they can within their bubble and online forum, they can still type a slogan to make other feelings acknowledged. that work very effectively, but also there is another aspect of a physical aspect, a somatic aspect that you really want to go out to make that slogan physical or materialized, that sort of thing. So yeah, so is a matter of making the collaboration and like making the technology reality or virtual reality a reality by re-evaluating through our environment and nature. Yeah, they're singing right now. Oh my god! And yeah.
Oh, you have to send us the link so we can also see it.
Yeah, and also there are police and all that kind of thing, of course. So
Yeah.
So meaningful. Yeah, I realized because I'm at the moment in a program, so I had to spend a lot of time thinking about my work and showing my work online. And I work with viscerality of the voice and polyphonies, which is extremely, you need to be within to really dive into the sound or really negotiate the body and the sound in presence. For me, the living is so important. So I've been struggling. I've been looking for ways of doing it. And I was realizing that I started to perform for the frame because it was the most effective. And even because of this little delay that Zoom does, you can do a polyphonic singing, because in polyphonic singing, it's okay when there's some delay. It's even these clashes, this noise, because polyphony is like different lines and they have certain intervals, and these intervals make sound clash, and this clash makes a little volume, and it's a noise that for histories they have condemned it as diabolic, but it's this friction, this noise where the power is. It's like, and I discovered that you can do it through the interface, through these little glitches. And yeah, there is a power in this glitch. Maybe navigating this negotiation with the disturbances that the interface creates is also a way of, I was thinking of performing. But of course, it's transforming my body. I'm dizzy all the time. My body is so painful. But yeah, I guess you're having similar experiences. Oh.
We have a question that goes a bit more into aesthetics of club culture, because we were thinking this is something maybe that we all could engage, or you can all engage with through your own perspective. So it is really a question about this discrepancy that we also talked last time when we were not officially online, the discrepancy between the aesthetics of club culture and gathering, and who starts to like owe it. It was a bit what we now talked a bit about that, but our question would be how to reclaim these ways of getting together, clubbing or demonstrating, but really reclaim it as a political movement today. It's almost, to me, seems almost very impossible. And I know that you've been all doing it to some extent. And it is very, I mean, we can go here now from very general image to very microscopic scale of aesthetic, really, of music. By whom is it made? On whom does this work? And who claims to have it or to have a right to it? And I think that maybe you can all have a bit of tell us a bit how you imagine that also for the future. What could be today a possibility of, is this a possibility only to like, we have to start from scratch and do everything anew and really claim that's our, do we have to create a new things, new musics, new ways of being together? Or, because of course we discussed a lot how the techno culture and how the rave culture, from some very personalized spaces, it became a very globalized. We talked last time a bit with Bogomir about that recently, previous time, how you talked about what are the framings, how can we navigate through that? Yes, through that ownership. Yes, maybe that's something that we can open up now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm able to share the screen, but I would like to show 2 images. Is that possible?
That's totally possible.
Yeah, okay, so let me do this, share.
Great.
And I think now you will see it. So I wanted to show you how the revolution in Georgia looked like from a bird eye view. So it's like this kind of organic crowd. And then I want to show you how the protest in Israel looked like during the pandemic. So we're looking at the same amount of people, but following the sort of rules of a mask and I don't know, 1.5 or 2 meters. I'm not sure what's the regulation in Israel. So I just kind of want to show how fast we adjust to the new environment. So I don't see any problem like why something like this or like why this sort of way of gathering. I mean, honestly, dancing in space like this would be so much more exciting because you would really have to expand your body and your hands. And I mean, this is what you always want when you go out. You want to have a space to dance. You don't want somebody to breathe behind you constantly and like feel squeezed. So I think it's also interesting when you think of a psytrance scene, like they do take more space because of course the drugs are different, psychedelics, but also sort of the whole idea of using full body. So what I'm also trying to say is the way how we started dancing, it was also because the clubs became more and more crowded and packed and the music festivals were like pushing more and more people to monetize on us, then we started sort of almost not moving. So I think we're looking at a kind of very exciting moment where, how did you stop sharing? Oh, no, actually, I can maybe show you something more. You know, just like I'm just collecting like all these sort of different ways of marking the space and trying to think from the club perspective, but also from the perspective of performance, like how these spaces can be used. This is another example of a line in supermarket in Chile. So, you know, we are having some kind of dance notations that are now there, but nobody is really doing anything with them. They're just there to sort of show some kind of regulations, but where is the creativity? It's not there. So I don't know, like I think like normally what you expect is that the art and creatives now step in with some kind of proposals. But for some reason, like most of creatives are just sort of sitting and waiting for things to be solved. So it's also like a very, like, yeah, that's something that is also a little bit alarming. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know when it comes to ownership, but what we mentioned last time was this sort of idea that, you know, electronic music is always coming with this kind of like, you know, freedom and unity, and which is totally bullshit because the music has been totally used in a different context by music industry for a long time. And I think what was so exciting about some clubs last year and this whole movement of inclusivity, diversity, and female empowerment and queer community, this came because of frustration that the music that used to be connected to these communities has been totally taken out of the context. So you know, even that's what I mentioned, like the party can look the same, but it doesn't feel the same. And so even in you know, like you cannot say that the particular music kind of music is actually standing for the same set of values. There are spaces that have certain values, but the same DJ can play one space another, and it can totally be different. It can be super nationalist, and it can be super sort of liberating and free and open. So yeah, I think that's what you wanted to tackle a little bit, Magdalena, or yeah.
Yes, and I would like to maybe hear from Naya, from you guys, how to a bit hear about the story, because I mean we've talked once before, but now we are online, so I think it's interesting to also hear about Basani, about your strategies that you developed and why you developed it the way it is, and what sort of frame did it have, or does it have?
ზოგადად თბილისის საციკო მოედანი არის განსხვავებული მისი ისტორიიდან და წარსულიდან გამომდინარე. ჩვენ ჩვენი საზოგადოება ერთმანეთთან სულ დაპირისპირებაში იყო დაყოფილი, დაქუცმაცებული იყო ძალიან დიდი დაყოფა ერთმანეთთან დაპირისპირებული ჯგუფები და სადაც იყო მოედანი იყო ზუსტად ის ადგილი, სადაც ეს ერთმანეთისგან დაპირისპირებული ჯგუფები ერთიანდებოდნენ და ერთმთლიანობას ქმნიდნენ. ასევე იყო
generally, the dance floors of Georgia and dance floors of Tbilisi are quite different, because that our society, since the gaining of independence, has been quite very separated for a long time. We had the civil war, we had some civil clashes, and some parts of the society were always very separated. And dance floors were the spaces where all these people reunited again.
და თვითონ დემონსტრაციებიც იყო მხოლოდ ერთღირებულებების და ერთ შეხედულების თქვენ ადამიანები გამოდიოდნენ და იცავდნენ, გამოდიოდნენ რაღაც უსამართლობის წინააღმდეგ. ამიტომ ეს ერთიანობა, ერთ სხეულად ქცევა იყო ის მონაპოვარი ბოლო წლების, რომელიც ბოლო დროს მოვიპოვეთ.
And also the demonstrations which took place in the streets of Tbilisi, where those were the spaces and those were the times when people were uniting around one and shared ideas and ideas. And so the spaces and these happenings of the demonstrations and dances and clubs and this fact of uniting as a collective body was what we gained in the last years.
და ახლა როცა ყველანი ვართ განცალკევებულები, როდესაც ინტერნეტი იქცა ჩვენ საჯარო სივრცეც, საიდანაც ჩვენი კერძო საკუთრებიდან ვიბრძვით, რომ დავიპყროთ საჯარო სივრცე, ცოტა უცნაურ მდგომარეობაში ვართ, იმიტომ რომ ის მონაპოვარი ხელიდან გვეცლება და უნდა მოვიფიქროთ თუ როგორ ამ მდგომარეობაში როგორ შეიძლება ისევ ერთხელად ვიქცეთ.
And now, since after this crisis, we are in a quite strange situation, because we are reclaiming the public spaces from our own private spaces using the internet. So it's kind of paradoxical, strange situation, as we are trying to create the unity from our private spaces and to create the public shared unity again.
თუმცა ამას არ უყურებ რა ეს ფიქრობ რომ შესაძლებელია და ის ძველი პრაქტიკები ის ძველი უნდა ჩაბარდეს წარსულს და დროა თუნდაც საჯარო სივრცეს სხვანაირად შევხედოთ თუნდაც საცეკვაო მოედნებმა შეიცვალონ სახე და ფიქრობ რომ ეს არის კარგი შესაძლებლობა იმისთვის რომ ახალი ხედვები დავსახოთ ჩვენი მომავლისთვის.
But at the same time, I look at it as an opportunity of creating a new ways and new strategies and new practices of how to own the public space, of what we call the public space generally, and maybe we can also transform this separation into our power and to use it as a new tool of fighting, so to find some strength into this physical separation.
ერთ-ერთი ყველაზე დიდი გამოწვევა რაც არის ჩვენი ქვეყნის ეკონომიკური და სოციალური მდგომარეობიდან გამომდინარე ძალიან ბევრი ადამიანს რომლებიც თუნდაც დემონსტრაციაზე მოდიან ან კლუბებში მოდიოდნენ არ აქვს ცდომა ტექნოლოგიებზე არ აქვს ცდომა შენ ხმა ვერ მიდის იმ ადამიანთან ვისაც ყველაზე მეტად ჭირდება დახმარება იმ სოციალურ კლასთან იმ ვარს ქვემოთყოფ ადამიანთან რომელსაც ყველაზე მეტად ჭირდება ქუჩაში გამოსვლა რომელსაც ყველაზე მეტად ჭირდება ცეკვა.
The only problem is that if we look at it from the social and economical side, the people who are the most so the people who are in the most and biggest social and economical struggle, they have the less access to the internet, so they can't reach their voices to us, and it's more difficult to reach our voices to them. And the public demonstrations and yes, the physical gatherings was more available for them, but right now their voices are more muted.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yes, that's in general the problem at the moment in the whole world, that there's no access to internet and to technology. Yesterday we also had a Doreen at the moment for our improv panel, and he switched off after 3 minutes because just his internet broke, and it was so sad because he's from Congo and it was so nice to have him. And then in the moment that was the person that couldn't talk to us. So that kind of showed immediately how this functions, that again, just certain part of somehow of society. Also, we talked yesterday, you were guys talking in the voice panel, how elderly people, for example, do not also operate within the same spectrum of technology as the younger can. So they are also having a completely different, they get different news, they have a totally different, they operate within what they get and what comes out of them in a totally different ways. So they are also partially operating within different dynamics. Yeah.
Also in Austria, it was a big in the schooling system, because some kids, some families didn't have computers at home. They had the phones, and they wanted to do all homeschooling, and they designed the entire homeschooling for computers. And then they realized that some of the kids couldn't do the homework because it was too difficult to do it from the phone. So then the government had, because parents were protesting, and then the government made that the teachers printed the materials out. But then you see that a crisis like that brings all the indifferences in society, brings it up. It's not that it's now there. It's like it has been always there. The only thing, like in a time of crisis, it's more visible. And I wanted to ask you all, because we're talking about this crisis or this separation or this, maybe the fact that differences or that injustices are more visible in a time of crisis. I wanted to ask, do you have what do you think is this potential of the separation? Do you have you been speculating about or thinking or imagining ways where we can go now, or we can, I know it's not I was thinking now, because you see a potential in separation.
I mean, it's very difficult also, I'm in Netherlands, in Amsterdam. I mean, it's like a very wealthy country, and I guess it's different for everybody. But what I noticed is that for a lot of people, actually, this situation was something that they always wanted to do for themselves, but they couldn't because of the rhythm and the speed of living and demands. And so there was this kind of a collective exhaustion already, an announcement, even if you think about mental health and the burnouts and from all kinds of groups, like from art, from music industry, but also just people who do all kinds of daily jobs as well. So I mean, to whoever I spoke, somewhere after 20 minutes, half an hour, everybody would admit that actually they're so enjoying that they had this moment for themselves, or for connection with their family, or for whatever. And on the other side, there was this whole discussion here in Netherlands about productivity. I mean, people are super productive. Everything is still sort of happening. You can do so many things from home. And this whole idea of a labor that wakes up at 5 o'clock and goes to work and comes at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it's showing how ridiculous it is, and how people still find a way to be productive and do things, etc., etc. So I mean, that's if we want to talk about, and I mean, it's already discussed that the work in office will not be the same anymore. I was in a program with recently in an online stream with somebody from Broadway. so, you know, you would imagine that because they definitely depend from the audience and like a crowd, etc. But even they're rethinking their models because, yeah, there is this collective exhaustion. I don't know how it was for you before pandemics, but like you couldn't say that it was great. I don't think that we agree that we were living in an amazing time and like all this connection and togetherness and prosperity and joy and happiness. I mean, this is bullshit. It totally wasn't like that. So, so yeah, I mean, I see this kind of a chance to rethink the models. What's scary is that definitely, same as 9/11, this event will introduce more control over our bodies, over our data, our body temperature, our nationalities, our differences. And yes, it shows also the economy, the social layers differences. But it is an interesting sort of unplanned, unexpected break that will reshape the way how we live. Yeah. And definitely will have a lot of negative connotation, but also it gave us like a certain time for reflection, which most of us never really had.
ზოგადად მთელი ცხოვრება წიგნებში, სიმღერებში ყველამ გვეუბნებიან, რომ ხარ ძლიერი მაშინ, როდესაც ხართ ერთად. და ჩვენ ყველა გვეუბნება, რომ ვართ სუსტები, ვერაფერს ვერ შევძლებთ თუ ვიქნებით დაყოფილები და ზოგადად სისტემაც მუშაობს ისე, რომ ამ ერთობას ყოველთვის მუდამ ყოფს და ყოველთვის იგებს ამ შემთხვევაში.
Every time from the books, from the movies, from the music, we are told that we are stronger together, that we are weaker when we are alone or isolated or when we are separated. And we are taught like this. And the system itself is always working on how to separate us, to use this separation as a tool against us.
და ყოველთვის რადგანაც ჩვენ თავში არსებობს რომ ერთობა სულ ვიბრძვით ერთობისთვის და არასდროს არ ვსილობთ რომ თუნდაც მარტოებმა თავი გავიძლიერონ შევძლოთ თავის გადარჩენა და ახალი შესაძლებლობის პოვნა და ეს შემთხვევა რაც ეხლა ჩვენს თავს ხდებათ არის ის შესაძლებლობა რომ დავფიქრდეთ გვაქვს თუ არა შანსი რომ ამ მდგომარეობაში შევძლოთ შევძლოთ იმ შედეგების დადება, რაც შეგვიძლია ერთად ყოფებმა გავაკეთოთ.
But right now, but we have never thought of really using the loneliness and this isolation as a power. So right now we have the chance to think about if we can bring these same results while being alone and more separated. And if maybe this is the opportunity for us to think about this.
For Hong Kong, for the discussion on the public spaces, I would say is still in a very early stage because before everyone is so busy and they go to work more than 8 hours a day. And there's also a very intense sense of like pure capitalism. So like you work hard, you care for your own household, you earn a lot of money, then you have a good life or vice versa. So everything is your own responsibility. So it's very common that you don't know names from people on the same floor among different apartments. So it's very common. But things are starting to change from 2014, 2019, social activism, and also the pandemic, because generally we'll say because of the malfunctioning government, then we have to try to save our own lives because it's a life and death matter in times of pandemic. So slowly, people start to rethink about what does it mean to be a member of a civil society? What can I contribute? And so for instance, they will gather different small organization making use of Facebook group and Telegram group that we gather the pandemic resources to help tackle the pandemic, and also care for like elderly who live by themselves. So there is an ongoing self-help community happening among people in Hong Kong. So it sounds actually very normal, but for us, it is a new thing. So we're gradually learning how each member can contribute to a situation like this. But also the second thing is we start to rethink how we can make use of the public space, like a physical public space, because like I say, in a highly capitalist society, like most of the lands are privately owned. So there are some ridiculous cases about when you have to build a building, then you have to follow a government regulation to say you have to contribute a certain percent of land for public use. But in order to make the most profit, they make the public space very hard to access. So there you have all the shops and malls on the ground floor, which is the best spot. But then you have to go through a tiny entrance with one small elevator to go up. And then in order to make use of that public space, which very few people know about. So they, in that case, they didn't break the law, but also they get what they want, which is the profit. So now under pandemic, because shops are closed, shopping mall is not the ideal place to socialize because of the closed air conditioning. Then people start to think about, is there any parks around my home that I don't know of before? Or is there any trailing path that I can go hiking and go do stuff, socialize in an open space? So that is new. And I see people are gradually more and more enjoying it, judging by my own social media. So so we're grateful that we can still go out, so we're not completely locked down. But it also is a good time for us to slow down, to learn about public space and what we can do in those spaces. And yeah, I guess there's hope. Yes, and I cannot speak for everyone, but I can see there's a community that has a forward-looking path even after the pandemic life. So they will continue this kind of living style afterwards.
Bogomir wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, because now we are coming to this topic of space of urgency, and I am part of this project. It was supposed to open in October in Vienna, and it's really like a collaboration between different cities. Berlin, Vienna, Amsterdam, and really the whole point was that yes, gentrification is happening, yes, the right-wing populism is happening, the clubs are losing their properties. Like if you look into Berlin and the cities that have a history of self-organization, like from squatting, from different movements, really are trying to look back, like what did we lose by just selling the city to whoever had an offer to put. So this was something that we were really busy with, and also like looking into how, so I'm working on that project with Liz Kingma and social design department in Vienna at the University of Applied Arts. So really the idea was like, how can we become part of a society where people decide how the space will change and develop? And the whole idea was also the Amsterdam was already ready to start the pilot projects this year to open 11 locations, buildings, but also open air areas to really try to allow self-organization again. Another thing, what was very interesting was that nobody understood any longer what it means free space. It like, whoever, even people who remember the 80s or some earlier movements, you had to really remind them what it means that something is for free. The word for free is understood as something cheap, something is not right. Why is it free if it's good, and etc. etc. So we were really brainwashed for decades. This word free is totally corrupt, like kind of like it lost the power and meaning. So what's now interesting is when all these shops get closed and all these shopping malls and all like the foreign money gets out of the countries, you'll have a lot of free space. So like literally free. And I think what already I think Amsterdam is looking into that, like, okay, so how can we now start self-organizing again that is good for the community, that is good for the neighborhood, that is good for those who lost their location, and etc. Because every city has some free areas or buildings or projects that failed. So yeah, that's something exciting. And just to connect to this, like, I mean, my neighborhood, I'm living in a kind of suburb, so pretty much like a working class, if there is like a really working class in Netherlands. But normally you can't see people because they wake up at 4:35 and they're back like 6, 7, so they're exhausted. And there's always complaint how this community cannot adjust to the standards of a Dutch society because they're like from migrant backgrounds, or they're not contributing, they're not participating in cultural programs, but they just never had time for that. And now what's happening with the neighborhood is you see people, they're like all over the place. You see them, they're like communicating, they're like interacting, and they're here. Somebody is living here actually. So yeah, I don't have anything bad to say. That actually I fucking love it. Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
Camila, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, so the situation now in the UK is that everyone who can't work from home is encouraged to go to work. And this again means like not everyone is sitting in this position that I do enjoy or appreciate or I have needed. Like, and people, what am I trying to say? Like, not everyone's minds can be turned towards imagining futures because they're managing and navigating, like going to work in a pandemic on a crowded bus, you know, like it's really it's the same old shit, like the inequities, Veza, that you were mentioning, like, and the way that they surface incredibly strongly, it's like I'm just like, you know, I'm wordless, like I'm very like we are here, we get to talk about this stuff, we get to imagine possibilities, we get to reflect in ways that maybe we didn't have time to before. Like many people in this city, like, yeah, it's incredible that to be relieved of a workload and to recognize things about yourself, about your relationships, about your life, like to contemplate, like to do these very important things that are not under these regimes, they are not given space generally. But this is not, it's really not everyone, and it worries me. Yeah, again, like who is building the future?
Yeah.
And who has a voice, who can speak when, you know, like it's, so I become very emotional, like I'm burning. It's the same.
Yes, I also, when you were talking, guys, I completely can relate to so much you said, because I see it here too. I see very good signs. People start to act in a public space much less rigid than they used to. They start to suddenly lay on the grass. I had like 3 guys from Turkey that normally would always sit in their little apartment smoking shisha outside on a blanket, and I was just like, wow, I mean, this is not something that I used to see. I see people going into interactions, people that never would talk to each other. So there's a lot of positive thing. People have time to play with the kids and all that. But yeah, who is given the time? And I'm also, I immediately wrote that this time showed extreme big difference again between the state and between the people. The state hardly ever proposes care solutions. It's the people again who propose their care solutions. It's the people who suddenly realize, oh my God, my neighbor is dying. We need to help each other. The states proposed very little solutions most of the time. And if they did, they are extremely totalitarian and going like bringing us 100 years into like monarchy times, which is terrible. And I also completely realize it's again, of course, the people who are already least included into the, as you say, Jamila, the people who are least included into strategizing, into thinking, their voice was never heard really, and they never had time of talking and proposing. They are still excluded. That's why I was thinking this is a time that actually this individual's time that brought us together in that sort of way, and that we are privileged to talk and to discuss and to speculate. I think it would be extremely our responsibility at the moment to care for people who don't have that time at the moment, because I think if the people who are having the privilege now to talk and to think keep on excluding the others again, then the reality of this are people that are a lot of also our friends, a lot of our families that don't have this privilege will be forever forgotten, because they've been forgotten already, always. They've been not at all like existing on a map. They've been like entmündigt. That means the voice was just not never listened to. So I just think that because now there's so many texts coming on like post-pandemic, post-corona, the futures, all the philosophers, mostly men, I'm sorry, mostly white men in the 50s that are having this amazing, texts pouring out into internet, and I'm reading and I'm like, wow, amazing, interesting. But I'm again thinking, who are these people? Whom does it reach? I mean, who is reading that? What are the actions? Where are the actions? I mean, we need much more action. This is what I think. We need still action. Even though we are here talking, this is a layer of construction that is not porous enough to be implemented somewhere. So that's why I think that for everything you guys said, from every perspective I can think of, I think I'm very much towards actions that have to happen, like physically analog ways that needs to be there. That's what I think. So yeah, I got a bit agitated, but I'm
one thing. Oh, sorry, did you?
No, please say something.
One thing I would hope for is a reduction of the working week. Like this is that could be an interesting thing that comes out of this.
That would be already a big progress, definitely, also for here. Because we had also demonstrations here, demonstrations that we did for 1.5 year last year, and it was beautiful movement, but still, of course, the people that we wanted to participate, they couldn't. At 6 p.m, they were just so dead that they were just so happy to just go home and just fall into their bed or sit in front of TV. I mean, that's totally obvious. They were not joining us on the streets. So this is also a big question. How to
mean, the political protest, even if you think of a states, why sometimes it's so hard to gather in a political protest, because you always have to do it after your working hours or on a day when you don't work. I mean, and the way how the work is, how the contracts are done and everything just doesn't allow you to form this large collective body that. So yeah, definitely the working hours are something that that needs to be reshaped, but also the way how you engage with your the contracts basically. Yeah. So
and in the line of the conversation, and how do I add in a very short way? Yes, and in my field work, I see a lot of we call flash mob, and yes, working hours is a big issue for Hong Kong people. But if the sense of urgency is strong enough, and even like a 15 minutes continuing, and social resistance is as long as this is continuous enough, it's a very powerful tool and powerful ways to protest and reclaim or empowered. So if I may, I can share one photo that I took.
Yeah, sure.
And let's see, share screen, and then boom, and share. Yes, can you all see?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this photo is taken from like the CBD of Hong Kong Central. So and people are singing during lunchtime, just for 15 minutes. As you can see, the way they dress, like they have high heels and they have fancy leather bag. So they are from the elite class, from which we see people from Hong Kong, but they, because of their belief, then they protest in 2019, and then for just 15 minutes, 30 minutes. And this kind of things continuing doing, and it actually has still happened in Hong Kong these days, like last week and so. And it sounds very romanticized version of social resistance, and but it's something that I really like the word Madalena and Veza uses, like a soft resistance, right? It like physically describe what we deliver to the space, which in my case, that is the music. And in many of your ways, it's like the body movement, gesture, choreography. So it's a very soft gesture, but still it is a very strong kind of resistant power, as long as it is continuous, as long as it is widespread enough that people agree with you, people echoes with you. So yes, working hour has been a strong issue in the 2019 social movement. Sometimes, like, we kind of mock ourselves to say we are Sunday protesters, because we go to work on Monday and Friday, and then we go protest on Saturday and Sunday. But and it's still the case, sadly. But it's something that we have to fight against. But there are tiny little ways. We say, like water, like we say, be water, to leak into the leak of the institution. Yeah.
And Magdalena, can you just tell us a bit more about what were the protests exactly directed for? And at the moment, they are probably for reclaiming the space, but what sort of different political agendas people have that brings these very different people together on the streets? What is the reason?
For now, I guess it's the continuous, very strong demands, and that from June 2019 till now, there are, in the slogan, they say 5 demands, no one less. So there are 5 demands they really, really want to ask for, and to that has yet been realized. So it is this sense that they keep pushing the government, and this is the sentiment that keep pushing them onto the street, because their request has not been acknowledged and realized yet in their point of view. And so for now, they're saying the most recent narratives is that the government is using the regulation of public gathering in the names of public health crisis as suppression tools for people to gather. So, and the rationale is because actually there are people gathering in parks, in beaches, that already break this regulation, but the police doesn't reinforce it. But for the protesting activities, they use this law to say, hey, you cannot gather because there are more than 8 people. So it is because of this rationale, they say the government is using different methods to say, to forbid people from gathering. Mm-hmm. So that makes people angry, of course. And so on weekend, they still go to shopping mall, public space to sing their anthem and to chant slogan and so forth. The scale has been smaller, largely because of the pandemic, but yeah, but there's ongoing activities going on.
Magdalena,
Yes.
why singing?
Why singing?
Because that
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, Hong Kong people are not people who love to sing, and they're no. I know I'm generalizing, but actually it starts from the very beginning in June. That is because under what we have something called the public ordinance. So under that ordinance, there are certain rules for gathering and application for gathering at the police authority. But one exception is religious gathering, religious activities on the street. So so naturally they use it as a, well, I cannot say that, but so just by coincidence, an event happened hosted by a religious organization, and they start singing the song called Sing Alleluia to the Lord, so which is an English hymn. And then and because it's simple and chant-like, so it keeps spreading and spreading to religious and non-religious participants. So then it become like a culture of that. It become a culture in the demonstration event, in the protest. And yeah, and then when the movement continue, there are another Hong Kong, we call Hong Kong anthem, but you can search Glory for Hong Kong. So the international media has been calling it a new Hong Kong anthem. And that is also an interesting study because it's all start online. That goes back to our discussion of having this online space. It all starts online, and then when people, a small group of people bring out materials, and then like anonymous people join in and rearrange it and make music video of it. So then these two songs become like a theme songs for protest, 2019 protest. Which in 2014, we have another set of songs singing that kind of thing. And there are criticism, of course, to say it shows us as weak protesters. But this strategy kind of speaks to people who want to voice their opinion, but not in a violent way. So, yeah.
This is so interesting because also yesterday we talked a lot about vulnerability in the public space, independent voice, how to accept vulnerability in the public space. We were also thinking a lot about practices that are not production-based in the public space, so reclaiming public space by practices that are against producing, against the capitalistic system. That means that are mostly like art practices and things that are just being deemed as useless for capitalist society, in a sense, like you can't monetize them, you can't just sell them. And we talked a lot about during the lecture with Alex, that is a very interesting one that I really propose you to watch. It's going to be on YouTube also, because he spoke about ecology of different practices, aesthetic practices, how the relationships could be changed along some aesthetical phenomena or aesthetic preconditioning. I was thinking a lot, we talked yesterday about this sustainability of protest or sustainability of practice, which opposes to capitalist system which works on extremes, meaning on explosion, on pushing, on revolution, and or of total apathy, of that total extreme of being completely apathic and not being able to react to the oppression. And on the other hand, you have people, as you say, Magdalena, violent, fighting against that pressure. And sometimes there is also a limit to that, and people just break down. And the whole history, when we watch this explosion and then falling down, explosion, falling down, that dynamic, that there is something in between that could be sustainable. And I see the singing as a certain sustainability of protest, which doesn't exhaust you, which doesn't make you feel like we also did that here with dancing rave protesting, because it was something that people wanted to do, and it could go for 1 year, and it was happening every week. So some sort of practices that oppose to that marching, chanting, screaming your voice out, so then after you are just completely not able to talk anymore, or fight violently so you are bruised and end up in hospital. So something that produces a certain energy that can be shared and sustained, and somehow giving you a certain responsive abilities on a small scale, but that makes you feel good, somehow good about being resistant. This is, I think, something very interesting that I'm very interested also in myself. And this is maybe something that public space could, for me, somehow be a part of, or we could start practicing this sort of practices of sustainability outside. This would be for me a probable opposition to maybe what we did or what we are forced to do by the systems. If, of course, we have enough time. I mean, I'm very proud of Hong Kong people who go to protest on the weekend after having a 60-hour week of work. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. All right, Veza, you wanna, or do you guys?
I feel, yes. I wonder. We have been talking for 1.5 hours, and of course, we proposed more questions. But I have the feeling that it's the moment to round it up, maybe, because opening a new question. There's no, usually for the people watching, you can ask. You can write in the little chat a question, but there's no questions. So we can, if there is something you want to ask to each other or to us that is still in the air, that would be the moment.
I feel like now, like just standing up and dancing together, but because I feel like we are in so different realities at the moment, and I feel so grateful that we can meet. On the other hand, I know that we now just, everybody goes back to his own reality. And this is for me something that is most painful somehow, always. This impossibility that we can grab a beer, that we can just, you know, engage together now in something that would make us, at least for a moment, feel like we belong to the same space. And I think this is the most, so I don't like this moment.
No. But still, I still am impressed by all the silence in these conversations, like the ending in any kind of online conversation is so abrupt. There's no, I haven't figured out the way of finding a net that feels good for everyone. Like and I think maybe it's part of it, and it's also beautiful to be shy and silent and insecure for a bit together.
I also lost you. You all froze. So.
That's nice. Maybe we should all freeze, but like really now, you know, for the and just
or make a funny background. It's
well.
Thank you so much for participating in this conversation. I'm also gonna look for a funny background. Wait.
I cannot do this because I don't have a pro version. So.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe I like. No, this is
nice. This is nice. This is nice.
How are you guys feeling though, Fencer and Madalena? That's the almost the last panel you guys have to moderate, right?
Yeah, there's another one today at 3 that if anybody of you want to join, it's an active panel for people to engage really in artistic research or in artistic practices and social responsibility. So we are just trying to talk with Alex together about how we can, as artistic researchers or researchers in arts or through arts, be really understanding where that position is of our research field also and of our practice. And Alex has this hypothesis that, of course, all of our practice should be for common good. And I think this is a very good point that he's making, that at the moment today, I think it's almost not possible anymore not to think in that way, to just think that whatever we do also as part of society, that it somehow has to serve a purpose where things get better. I mean, somehow, if nobody else does that, then this is definitely, I think people have this realization now, and if this stays with us, I guess maybe there's really a chance that people start to direct their actions in a different way. But of course, it's not going to be done by the capitalist big corporations. Definitely not.
And on a personal level, I think I'm really, I feel very tired because it's very draining to have so many online conversations, but also that you can do a research and open a conversation to a colleague, and then open a conversation to 6 other experts, and then to 8 other experts, and then that because for me, I struggle a lot, because as an artist, I struggle a lot with, okay, I'm a researcher, I'm an artist, or why is making art not artist, but also like, what is my responsibility as an artist, and all this, and then it's also my research, and everything has been navigating there and conversing, and I think that's brilliant. I'm really thankful, and it's an experience. Yeah, I think that's one of the positive things of the internet, and of powerful colleagues like Magdalena, the Jovaniets, who is like can pull through a thing like that.
No, but I think it was very nice for us. It was very rewarding to be able to have this connection that I think we wouldn't make otherwise, even if it was live. I mean, if we were live in Graz, I wouldn't say we wouldn't have so much audience. We wouldn't be able to talk to so many of you, also to so many different people. And I feel this is something definitely very important, because we had to find a place to relate to so many different spaces and many different contexts, which normally you are not doing, because you're in your own artistic bubble. And I think talking to you now and understanding what I do as myself, as an individual, in connection and context of all this any practices that I'm having here in front of myself, and countries and situations, is, I think, extremely good to do, to be able to somehow understand how do we navigate through that together somehow. Yeah, so that was really great, but a lot of work, but was really fantastic to get to know so many people personally. I'm very happy, and I'm really just can hope that one day we can really come across each other live, and it will be very nice now to have a background that we all share, the same background in the back. Then at least we could think like, oh my God, you're just sitting next to me or something. But yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, that was my
yes, thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, feels a bit awkward, but I really truly hope that soon we'll be able to just really cross paths. And I wish you all guys the best of sustainable energy that you can restore in yourselves, connected to your context where you are. I mean, this is what we all need, because it's going to take a long time. So I think we have to take care that we don't burn out and collapse too early. So yes.
And I hope we can party soon also. Out.
Yes, this definitely.
Also okay. Okay.
Okay, guys, then have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Yeah.